will get us into the original opener of the show. Um, just your overall thoughts on the Sounders offseason. I know it was I know off seasons for Seattle sports teams are always hotly, debated, whether it's the
Yeah.
Mariners or so on and so forth, right? The Seahawks have their own cap issue to get through. Um, I remember I held on to this quote through the entire season last year. Was that, when we heard from Craig Weibel in the summer after the window closed, he said, we're gonna pool our resources for the winter window and really boost our roster. And they didn't do it in this big, we're going to bring in a guy internationally, we're going to bring in this big name per se outside of MLS. I'm sure fans were thinking outside of MLS, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you get Jesus Ferreira, who's young and has been a goal scorer in the MLS, and obviously seems motivated to get back to a level he was at for I think last year was down due to injury, right?
Yeah.
And then Paul Areola. So you just basically take the cupboards away from FC Dallas. Um, and I mean, I do think that they got better. I just understand why fans are saying, "Hey, I don't want to swear this early into the show." Every show, oh, when I do, I try to not swear early on, and usually it comes towards the back end.
There you go.
Um, what my point is, like, I do think they got better. I do think that they contend for several of and I think they
Yeah.
put up a good chance in all the competitions that they're in. Well, maybe Club World Cup not so much. Um, but like I understand why the frustration is there.
Yeah.
What did you think about it? Just as someone keeping track.
Yeah, what I wrote down here is good retool.
Mm,
I said, they maybe didn't necessarily fix all of their problems long term. But they did a really good job of this is something, I focus on a lot because we look at what college football programs do year on year in the transfer portal, and what a program like Oregon does is it
yeah.
retools every season. You're gonna pick up a couple guys who maybe they're not gonna be here for 2, 3, 4 years, but they're gonna be quality starters for a couple of years, especially if you believe your window is open in
Mhm.
a couple competitions. You can say maybe this isn't a guy who breaks the ceiling, but he raises the floor and he can push the ceiling a little bit. And I think honestly, at this point, that's a good thing for this team to do. I think, last year they did kind of lack a game-breaking player like we had in Ladero, but they went out, they tried to get that guy, and you have to give those types of players a little bit of time. So around him, yeah, retool. I think it was successful. They picked up some older guys, some younger guys, like we've talked about. It's a solid like 7 out of 10 window.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I like the I end up using the word retool a lot
Mm,
over the last year or two because I do think like the Sounders obviously going on the run that they did in the past playoffs, like I didn't
yeah,
necessarily expect them to get by the boogeyman that was LAFC, right? I mean, just
yeah.
seeing how Seattle had fared against them. I remember going into the playoff match, what, 2 years ago here in Seattle, where Denny Buanga came down and scored the one goal, and that's all they needed. I said, shh, I'm not saying it this time. I was concerned. I really like, you know, the foundation they've got. Obviously, they're a team that, they're happy contending the way that they are with this roster. They're not a team that's going to go and blow everything up just because they haven't,
Yeah.
gone back to MLS Cup in what, 5 years, 4 years? Um, so yeah, I mean, at like in a vacuum without any outside noise, I think this is a successful offseason. I'm not saying the greatest offseason in the world. I think a seven is it's a solid number there. But again, I do understand like the frustration because I had that Weibel quote in my head talking about winter resources. And I said, all right, like let's buck up. And then I remember specifically when we heard from Craig after the Ferreira news, he said that what was it was Leo True and about 2 million general allocation money. And he said we didn't really have much to offer besides that. And then they
Hmm.
were happy that Dallas took that. And I was like, that was your resources? That's hmm. So that's why, like, I don't know. I do think they'll be, I don't think we'll be watching a boring Sounders team this year. But again, I just really want to drive home that I understand why fans were frustrated or we're kind of wondering like where's the rest of it.
I mean, because
Um,
you look at what other teams are doing, right? And
mhm.
LAFC just went out and got, I think this is official now, Cengiz Under.
Oh my God.
And you look at even other teams, or Quakes picked up Chicho Arango. You're like,
Yes.
these teams are making big money signings. They're taking chances, is what they're doing. Sounders haven't taken a lot of chances recently when they have, at least, early on, they've gotten burned by guys like De La Vega. Now that could still pay off, but
Yeah.
they just don't take a lot of big swing chances. And that I think that's okay. That's a reasonable way to build a roster here, especially if you're a team like the Sounders who's going to be stable.
Yeah, that's a good point. That actually helped me remember something I did want to talk about was that the big swing, right? Because there are teams that go out and they take the big swings and they live or die by it, right? Yeah, like you said, Seattle has not been that club really. And they've been obviously very successful in working that way, So I think maybe, yeah, like you said, I think folks kind of got a little bit of envy there. It's the meme of the little kid who, wanted to go to McDonald's and not have McDonald's money. Jesus Ferreira, it is, champ. Um,
Ah, it'll be
yeah,
fun.
but so you mentioned Pedro actually, which is what I want to talk about next.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey. So where are you going to watch all of the Sounder away games this year?
Away games for the Sounders. Well, since Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that's a great idea. Go Sounders. Hope we see y'all here.